Hello, and welcome to Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm your host, Karen Seltz, and tonight I have my very good friend with me, Shelli Jost Brady. Welcome, Shelli.
Thank you. How are you tonight, Karen?
I know. I'm so excited to have you. Shelli is my most loyal fan. She comes to so many of my live recordings, and we've coached a couple of leadership programs together for a total of 8 months. And she has continued on with that and is a master level leadership coach. And she's also a facilitator of individuals and corporations in helping them amplify their voices during difficult conversations. Can you tell us what that means, Shelli?
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of screaming and yelling, doesn't it, when we amplify our voices in difficult conversations? But it's actually the opposite of that. It's conflict resolution. How do we be in these moments where we disagree? And that can be as simple as, a minor thing to something major like politics, religion, race, and half a dozen other things. And how do we engage in conversations? Not just civilly, but where we are actually in connection with each other, in communication with each other, not just talking at, over, or waiting for you to finish so I can say my piece and walk away disconnected.
Wow. So it sounds like you create a space where people actually feel seen and heard because they are.
And it's a brave space. We talk about creating safe space, holding space. You hear about that a lot in the leadership work, right? But the safety has to come from within. So how do we create an environment where an individual feels safe to speak their truth, be authentic, and be able to receive that, from somebody else. And so creating that brave space, because I can't make it safe for you, but I can create an environment that honors the individual. We're back into respect now, and that openness, so that the communication can actually transpire. Because if we can't connect, we can never get past our impasses.
Wow, that's really beautiful. I was talking to somebody the other day about this within parenting, because I believe from a very young age, from the time my kids could understand language even, I was creating a space where they could tell me the truth because they weren't going to be punished for it.
I love that. That reminds me, I did the same thing with my kids because, right, what is that old adage, children are to be seen and not heard. And it was heartbreaking for me to go to volunteer in my oldest daughter, her kindergarten class, and watch how the whole day was about breaking them down. Like you might see, like we do in the military, break them down to build them back up. And they're 5. 5-year-olds, they scream and they wiggle and they giggle and they do all those things. And why do we want to stop that? Because those people that we break down, they grow up to be our employees who stay between the lines. And if we want innovation, if we want entrepreneurs, if we want leaders, then we need to be able to allow, those things to be heard. So anyway, back to the child, what I did with my kids is you bust yourself first. If you did something in school, I don't want to read the note, get the phone call from the teacher. I want to hear it from you. And so they did. They came home, they'd tell me, they'd be the first one. And then we'd figure out, where do we get to go from here? What do you think should happen next? And they got to be part of that solution. But have you ever been in a conversation with your child and you almost want to go, because I'm the mommy, that's why.
Wait, you were too loud for Zoom. Say that again.
Because sorry, like because I'm the mommy, that's why, hold ourselves back from saying, because, I got said that to me when I was, small. And I never did it to my kids, but it's a natural tendency, right? You just get to a place where you're like, well, we do it as bosses too. Or we do it as, leaders of countries or whatever. It's like, where do you open it up and actually allow a conversation and discord to happen?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think, starting with parenting, it's a good way to teach your children how to think, not think for them. we don't need to come up with solutions for our children. They're smarter than we are.
Yeah. So, and again, about thinking for them, how often do we tell children how to behave? Don't say that. Tell Tommy you're sorry. But what's sorry do? I mean, is it really a heartfelt thing, or are they saying it because, do we say it because that's what we think we're supposed to say when we've hurt somebody's feelings?
Yeah. It's funny when I talk about the word or the phrase, I'm sorry. Most of the time when I hear it through this lens of, what does this person want from me? Like they don't want me to be mad at them. They want forgiveness. They want harmony. Usually when someone says it to me, at least, they want something from me. It's not, acknowledging the wrong they did and making a choice to do better next time. Yeah. It's usually not like that.
So all this started out with something what I call the old conversation. So I started out in design and architecture, and I would go into a client who wanted to build a new building or move into a new office space, and I would program them, meaning I would ask certain questions about what their needs are that they're trying to fulfill. And I would get things like, well, I want the corner office with the best view and the biggest parking space. Great. And why do you need that? It's got nothing to do with your organization and everything that you do, but it's a placeholder for something, right? People use the words that they have to ask for what they want, but because that isn't, really a reflection of what they're looking for, what were they looking for? Respect, security, but they don't know how to ask for those things. We don't know how to ask for those things. And so it would be like, what is it? What's the conversation not being had? So the old conversation is to ask for things in the way we know how to ask for them. My son used to ask me for juice 20 times a day. He got juice 20 times a day until I also got present too. He didn't want juice. He wasn't thirsty. He found a way of asking for something. What he got in return was juice, a kiss on the forehead from mommy, and says, I love you so much. Now go off and play, because I had to get back to the thing I was doing that, he interrupted me for. And so when I got present to the conversation that we were having, the old conversation, the old style that we do it versus the conversation we need to be having, and in being really present to that, I could begin to shift it. So then what I was creating as solutions and design for my clients just really hit the mark, because we were able to find out what the real unmet needs were and address those. That led me into moving from organizations into whole communities. I was a planning commissioner with the city for 6 years, and in a lot of public hearings, a lot of stakeholder negotiations, same kind of thing. I could be present to the conversations that we weren't having and the ones that we needed to be having, and I could shift it. So play that out a little further. That moved into things like conversations about restorative justice and how to have a conversation where we had actually inflicted harm on another person. Now we're back into saying I'm sorry doesn't work.
Yeah. I want to back up a little bit, because you said a lot of really important things. And I think it would really serve people to know what you mean by what's not being said. And then also, what do you think it took from you to figure that out, and that other people could learn?
It's not being said. I mean, some of it is, well, think about your own unmet need you have, or think about a relationship that you have where you aren't saying what you want to be saying. Maybe you don't know what the words are, but you have a feeling. And instead of expressing the feeling, being vulnerable and authentic in that, you're using whatever phrases you have. Sometimes it's picking a fight with somebody because they've upset you in some way. They haven't noticed that you got your hair cut, or, didn't take out the trash, or remember your anniversary, or even that you were just present that day. I mean, it can be any number of things, but we don't authentically express, as general practice, we don't authentically express what we're thinking and feeling in the clarity with what we're thinking and feeling. We just mask it with something else because that's kind of how we've been socialized, how we grew up.
I would love to pause you there for 1 second, because that's really important. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of people don't even know what they're thinking and feeling because they're not giving themselves quiet time or space.
Yeah.
to
So
figure
the
it out.
self-awareness and, you know, just to be in relationship with our own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. So what are some of the practices that you do personally that get you at least aware of what your own unmet needs or your thoughts or feelings on things are?
Wow, that's yeah, in that one right now. So whenever I've got a lot of anxiety, it's so easy to like either stay in bed or, you know, go. Some people might binge on food. I really like binging on Netflix. But to be actually recognize that I'm in pain. So that's the first thing going, yeah.
And
This
how do you
hurts.
recognize it? How does it
Um,
show up for you?
when I'm doing something to divert, like I said, when I'm like, won't get out of bed, like as if staying in bed and just relaxing until it passes, or avoiding, and maybe avoiding is probably the key word, you know, but like binging on Netflix or something like that, like avoiding really getting anything done. But you know when you're in pain, you know, the anxiety, when the monkey brain's going and won't quiet down. When you're just not at ease, when you're in dis-ease, right? So it's like most of the time we're trying to soothe ourselves. We're trying to deny that we feel bad, right? So that's what I'm saying, is to recognize it, just go, oh, actually, this hurts, ouch. And then the other one then is to sit down. I like to use my journal, I have my notebook right here, and just go and ask myself a very simple question. And it's interesting because I'm going to tie this back to something, but I'll just say, okay, what's coming up for you, Shelli? I'll just really put that at the beginning of it, and then things will flow. What I want to tie it back to is when I talked about restorative justice and healing the harm, the opening prompt for that conversation, it's a facilitated conversation, but it'll say, you know, John, what is it you would like Sally to know about what's coming up for you right now? And that way I'm inviting the conversation. I'm inviting one person to talk to the other person, right? So I started doing it to myself, because somebody will say, well, you can't do a self-facilitated restorative justice conversation. And that's not true, because as soon as I asked myself that question one day, I was in such anxiety. I said, okay, Shelli, what is it you want yourself to know about what's coming up for you right now? And all of a sudden, this stuff started spewing out of my head. But we're always looking at tapping it down, not inviting it to come out. So however you do that, for me, it's journaling, but it's the prompt of, what do I want myself to know right now?
Yeah.
We're already doing all the self-talk up here, which is not productive. But if we can get it out. So yeah, that's really the first thing. Then I can see, there's this beautiful thing, and I know you know a lot about the neural pathways, but you know, when you let something come out of your head, down your arm and out your fingers, the pen onto the paper, there's something really transformative about all of that and therapeutic. And what ends up coming up is all the intuitive things that you already know. You just wouldn't allow yourself to like pay attention to or hear or believe or whatever, but it's like as soon as you see it, more comes and it just begins to spew in it. And you can, pretty much solve your conflict right there, or at least be aware of what your conflict really is. No, you didn't want juice. You wanted love. So quit asking for juice. Ask for love. So for me, I had a high anxiety thing about a week or so ago after I finished another course. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And so I said, okay, what's coming up for you, Shell? And it was like, I'm having lots of feels. Okay, about what? And it was like, alone. I feel like everyone's gone. I'm the last man standing. And it felt so awesome to actually say that and put it out there. And then in that moment of that relief, it said, wait a second, though. What if you're at the beginning? What if you're at the start and no one else has arrived yet? And at that moment, my heart just walls flew open. And I had transformed that anxiety in that moment to hope. It was 3 lines on a piece of paper. But only after I allowed myself to sit down and face whatever it was I was fearing. And that's all anxiety is. It's fear of something. And in relationship with another person, we're always afraid to, or our natural tendency is to be afraid of where a conversation will go if we speak our truth, if we share our hurt or our wants or our needs, that the other person might reject us or fight with us or half a dozen other things. And so we keep it in. And after a while of doing that, we don't actually know what it is we're keeping in because we're safeguarding it so much, about afraid to show it, that we're no longer in relationship with it either. It's just another way we continue to create disconnect for ourselves. So,
wow, that's so beautiful. You unpacked a lot of things. Thanks for your vulnerability too, because I believe it will really serve people to know what you do as a practice, because you're so wise. And I know you, like from our very first conversation, I knew you were intuitive and wise. I just felt it in my bones. And like the feel I get from you is that you are so connected to all that is, and you're able to embody it and then share it in a way that's so beautiful and unique. And I really appreciate you, saying, hey, even though I'm wise, I mean, you didn't say that, I'll say it, even though you're wise, you still have your moments, the human moments where you experience anxiety, and you get to do your practices. So thank you for sharing those with us.
Thank you. It's really interesting because somebody was saying something to me before we started talking here tonight, about what was I afraid of, when I am in these conversations, facilitating these conversations on racial healing or restorative justice or any of those things, I get in the flow of it, and nothing about that's intimidating to me, even though I'm giving examples of difficult conversations and I'm inviting people into difficult conversations, and we're actually role playing them and working through them. The part that I'm afraid of is when I'm not in those moments and where I go next, and always trying to define where I go next. And so there are a lot of really intimidating moments for all of us, because it's where it's what I haven't lived yet. So it's unknown, right? And we're hardwired to be about survival. So our cave brain takes us back to, well, I'm going to plan for the worst scenario so that I have the greatest chance of surviving, right? So now I've totally created a future of the worst scenario instead of the best one. Why do we do that to ourselves? I know you can speak a lot on this topic too. Why do we do that to ourselves?
Well, and what's funny to me is it just recently hit me, our subconscious mind thinks survival is anything that didn't kill us, which is more of the same, the shit that's made us miserable.
Yes.
It didn't kill you, it made you miserable, but you're still alive. So let's do more of it. So we continue in these patterns that don't serve us. So it's, making conscious what's been unconscious.
Right. So, we have a lot of mutual friends. So, some of the practices are, what are 2 behaviors that I don't want to do anymore? What are 2 emotions I don't want to do anymore? Literally, I was just doing this yesterday. Okay, I don't want to do procrastination anymore. That behavior, but I have to be aware of it, right? Again, I have to be in connection with myself. And I don't want to be in procrastination and escapism. Remember, I love to, I can binge watch Netflix like mad. 2 things I don't want to feel anymore, and then I don't want to feel hesitant. I don't want to feel like I have to hide because I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of being bigger. What does that mean? I guess it means doing something I've never done before. Got it. So if I'm going to always paint everything I've never done before as something I'm afraid of, then am I going to do it? No. And as long as I do everything today that I did yesterday, nothing changes. Yep. So I get to decide what do I want to do instead of, whenever I start to recognize that I'm procrastinating, what's the thing I want to do instead? And I give myself a replacement behavior.
Yeah.
I want to go do one thing. Just the action doesn't have to be, oh, I have to go write that research paper that I've been putting off. No, maybe I just go unload the dishwasher or something.
Yeah.
And it might sound like avoidance, but we're talking about baby steps, right? We're not talking about making the huge leap from the behavior that we're trying to change. We're just trying to change one thing. And as you know, committed action is, an antidote to everything that ails us. So
it really is, because when you, especially in those hard moments, when you want to procrastinate, every part of you wants to turn on that Netflix and you go do something else, you go walk around the block, you send one email, you do one thing.
What's the next one step? Just that one step, and then you can decide the one step after that. I know when I was going through my dark night of the soul, it was hard. I had, I felt like I needed to meditate like 20 minutes every hour just to get to the next hour, just to get through a day. And I had a dear friend, and he said, that idea of walking, right? And we used to run together when we were younger. And he said, Shelli, just put on the shoes. Just put them on. You don't even have to lace them up. Just put them on. And the next day, if you want to lace them up, lace them up. But it's amazing that when I would put the shoes on, of course I'd want to lace them up. But it was the idea that I thought that I had to go running as the thing. We don't. We just have to do the next one thing that gets us out of the moment that we're in that's not serving us.
That's so true. And I make these little agreements with myself, like, no, I don't want to run for half an hour, but I can run for 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then if I feel like running more, I will. But 2 minutes I can handle. 2 minutes of almost everything I can handle.
Probably well, again, right. And then it's about being in relationship with yourself. Again, that connected to you and knowing how you think and feel. And so once you do that, how do you feel when you do your 2 minutes?
Amazing. Like, I feel accomplished.
Exactly. That then gives you the good feeling to maybe run another 2 minutes or to do it again the next time you're stuck. Oh. Right. So it's these little things, but being in connection with ourselves, then we can learn, once we recognize what our needs are and how to self-soothe. We're not looking for somebody else to soothe us because they can't. Like, our pain's our pain. But we do, as a tendency, our human condition is to look outside of us for what we have to give to ourselves. So no one's ever going to make us happy. And we're going to continue to ask for things to make us happy, but they're never going to make us happy because that's not where it gets to come from. And then you just take that little example and manifest it over any other topic you want. And that's how we tend to interact in this world.
Yeah. And every time we do the thing, especially in the hard moment, when we do that next right thing, it builds a new neural pathway. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, that I say a lot is when you catch yourself doing the thing that you said you don't want to do, you get to celebrate that you caught it, because you used to not see it.
That's right.
For your entire life, you probably didn't see it until it was 2 weeks later or whatever.
Yeah. So now again, back to connection, right? And that self-awareness. That self-awareness then is going to have you show up for another human being in a way where they feel seen and heard. And now the conversation really is in a connected place. So now we can take that into, if I've harmed somebody, that I can have a conversation with them about, we talk about level 4 responsibility, right? But in a place where it's really heartfelt, because I'm sorry doesn't cut it. I recognize I did this thing. I did it for these. This is where I was coming from. This is how I get to not do that. This is how it didn't work. This is, where I am with you. Because the I'm sorry is, again, because of the way we were, it was taught to us when we were young. Tell them you're sorry. I'm sorry. Heartfelt.
Sorry that you made me do this.
Yeah. When my children were little, I used to say, I would say, now, is there anything that you want to say to your brother? I wouldn't tell them they had to say you were sorry. And they, my daughter would say whatever to my son. And then the thing I taught them back was that they got to accept it. So my son would say, well, I accept that, but you don't get to do that again, or you can't treat me like that, or, whatever. So that there was this exchange, and that one could stand in their own power and participate in that. So I think it's really important that we understand, language, words are creative. They have power. And if we throw them around, they do become powerless also in the I'm sorry. And what we lose in those moments is the opportunity to create a deeper connection with another human being. Yeah. And that would just grow up into bigger harms.
Yeah. The other thing is the energy behind the words. Like I'm sorry is so different than I am truly sorry. I had no idea that was going to impact you that way, or I was whatever. I was this, not you were. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the energy, the intention, the emotion behind it really makes a difference too, as intention.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, when you were saying what you were just saying, what comes up is guilt and blame and all of it, whether you're throwing it out or stabbing it inward. But if we're not in relationship with what we're talking about, we're connected to a feeling, then it's going to come across as inauthentic, insincere, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's going to happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So take it into where we've inflicted harm on somebody, whether that's racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, any of these ways, or just the fact that we disregarded another person. If we're in relationship with ourselves, then we have the ability to not have those other isms sort of be taking place. And have you ever had a crummy experience with somebody, and then the next place you walk into, you leave your dirty fingerprints on them because the last experience sucked? Yeah.
I do my best to not do that anymore, but yeah, I used to a lot. Now
yes, you get so
shake
oblivious.
it off. I shake it off. I'm like, I literally will shake it off, because it's like, the body keeps the score. Like it stays in cells, and it's like an ick.
And so again, I love it. I love what you just said, the ick, right? And so if you can, at that moment, again, the acknowledgement, right? The awareness that in that moment you go, oh, this feels like shit.
Yeah.
And then, do your whole self clean. And then the next place you're going to go into, it's not going to leave a dirty fingerprints on somebody.
Yeah.
But it is when we're not in relationship with ourselves. That's where, and I mean, I'm not that way across my entire life. I can see where I might be where I'm most comfortable in my house with my family. I might not be as connected as I am like out in work in public, where I have more anxiety and maybe more preoccupation with, what I'm thinking and feeling. And so then, I'll get a nudge from my children, though, that sort of bring me a little bit more aware to the moment. I'm like, oh, right, I get to be this person everywhere, that's connected to myself, and not taking, anybody for granted. But that just comes with practice. So
absolutely. So what's your final words of advice for anybody who's, struggling with being present, or struggling not knowing themselves, or what their triggers are, or what, that they're even numbing out?
I actually heard something the other day about meditation. Was actually the definition is to be familiar with. And so it's, being familiar with yourself, and however you choose to do that. Like, you've heard the self-love. If you don't love yourself, you can't love another. You can't give away what you don't have within, that kind of thing. And so fill your cup. I think that we largely go through this world giving from our cup instead of from our saucer, which means we don't have our oxygen mask on first, which means everybody's getting whatever, keep that analogy going, half a breath, right? So if we tend to our most primary relationship, ourself, it is not selfish, it is self-full. It's and then that enlightened person, that person that I'm familiar with, that I'm in relationship with, I get to bring that person out to the rest of the world.
Ah, yes. Bring her out, Shelli. Let's play.
You got it, babe.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And
Thanks for having
where
me.
can people find you if they are looking for you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm getting ready to put another website out there for some new things that are coming up in some new collaborations. But for right now, LinkedIn, Facebook are probably the best places.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you
asking.
so much, Shelli. It's been amazing having this conversation with you.
I appreciate you. I love you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I love you too. You know it. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you right here next week.
I love you.